Hi, this is another episode of Ergonatic Podcast, and I'm Sasha Rosenbaum. I'm happy to be the host of this, and this is my friend Steve Harshbarger, and I'm super excited about talking with you today. So, you've done a lot of interesting things in your career. You've worked for big companies, for small companies, for consulting companies. I think your sweet spot is, technology startups, but why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what Steve is, who Steve is, and what Steve does?
Sure. Thanks for having me on, Sasha. And I love the "Stop Chasing Buzzwords" tagline. I hadn't seen that in print yet. That's great. That's good words to live by. But yeah, so I'm currently CTO at a startup called Where Might I Live. But my history, after school, I worked at a big global consulting firm. Doing like large scale software development for big corporate and government customers. Did that for 7 or 8 years, and kind of along the way, I started doing work with Microsoft around Microsoft Excel and their VBA language, kind of back in the day, and really got really got into that, and ended up with an opportunity to co-author a book on Microsoft Excel development, and that just got me down this really cool career track of kind of building front end analytic applications with super high productive tools, and kind of got me to the financial services industry. And I left that job, and I joined up with a kind of an up and coming firm in New York City, called Plural. And my first thing is I managed their first office outside of New York, which was in Washington D.C. And I built up a consulting practice there, doing custom application development for all kinds of clients, and had a great run there. I built that practice up in DC, and then that moved me out to San Francisco a while back, where I am now, and built up a practice there, and started getting involved in the startup community, as well as technology companies and things like that. And then about maybe like halfway through my career, I was kind of going up the ladder and having some success, but I was getting further and further away from the technology and building things, and kind of more into management and sales. And I just decided I wanted to be kind of closer to the stuff. So I decided I took sabbatical actually, and then kind of came back and kind of wanted to dive into the startup world. So kind of post my consulting career, I'm kind of the guy that finds, or an entrepreneur finds me, and I help take the business idea and turn it into a product plan and an architecture, and build a team and get an MVP built and kind of get it out into the market. So I've done a few of those. I've worked in interactive video, more recently digital healthcare, and now Where Might I Live, which I co-founded with a partner. And we can get into what that does in a bit, but that's me.
Yeah, so this a lot to unpack here. First of all, it's kind of
Yep.
like to me, it's a drastic shift from like consulting for kind of government and like highly regulated industries
Sure.
um to like building MVPs for startup. Like what do you like and dislike about each space? Like what is the interesting
Yeah.
bits of like how different work is done?
I think I didn't appreciate like what I was learning in my consulting career early on when I was there. Like it was like, it's fresh out of college, and like I was traveling and stuff, which was fun. But like, oh my God, I'm working for state and local governments, and it's boring. My clients go home at 4 p.m. and I go home at 8 p.m. you know, but want to work with commercial clients. So I was kind of longing like for something more interesting. But I mean, I really learned how to just like move from business problem to business problem, and figure out what needed to be solved and come up with a solution. Kind of repeat that process of being uncomfortable over and over again, and then kind of finding your footing and coming up with the solution, and how to talk to people in different disciplines. I think I can talk to creatives and business people and finance people and technology people, of course, but I think that early experience kind of helped me just kind of like get into different people's kind of languages and ways they think, and kind of be glue, between them. So that was great, for that. But at some point, like building stuff for other other companies or other people. I'm a creative person at heart, and I like to build things. And if it's my company or a company I'm a big part of, this just feels better. Kind of getting in and with a whiteboard and creating from scratch. So that's the feeling I'm chasing, if anything.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So
I do think so, like in consulting space where, which is like I'm kind of back in consulting space, right? Which is where we met. I think the interesting part that you mentioned is like that ability to talk to different people and understand concerns of different people because you've wore different hats throughout your career. Because it's like
yeah,
it's so common for like developers to dismiss operational concerns or for product to dismiss developers or like vice versa. It's like everybody's buzzing around like, Airbnb retiring product management right now, like, oh, it's a good thing, it's a bad thing. It's like if you like, I think the empathy you develop by trying on these different hats and kind of understanding that all these jobs have value to bring, and yes, maybe you could do all of it on your own, but like
yeah,
there's really skill sets and interesting things you learn while working and you can be really good at something that doesn't. I think we tend to dismiss non-technical people or like non-technical concerns, but I think you can be really good at non-technical concerns and help drive the technology forward. But I think to that point, like I think you're the most hands-on CTO that I know of, like because you actually like
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I think a lot of people say like, oh, never give up coding and whatever, but most people don't actually code that much, like at a certain level, and you kind of like live for that ability to play with technology. What's the sort of the most interesting things on your plate right now, like, for technology
Yeah,
wise
yeah.
and
Sure. Just before you get to one point, you said tendency to dismiss people in other disciplines. I think it's a little more subtle than that. Like for me, it's maybe not, maybe it's maybe assuming the work those other disciplines are doing are kind of easy or a given, and not understanding the depth of it. Like I know being on the receiving end of that, the classic, hey, could you just change this feature, for next Friday? Like, no. Like,
but the
um,
the
it,
classic XKCD, it's hard to explain the difference between something that will take me 5 minutes and a 5-year project that requires study and like like
yeah,
science and stuff. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm sure if I tell a marketing person to like change the screenshot and the collateral or tweak your campaign, there's probably months of thought that have gone into that. Things are hanging off it, and it's just like everybody's got their kind of depth of stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
But yeah. But anyway, yeah, staying hands on. I enjoy it. I think the feedback I get from people that work for me, you can tell me if it's true or not, but I'm told I'm a good mentor, because I can actually get in and like help problem solve and help people understand more of the why, not just give the solution. And I I feel more comfortable doing that when I actually know, like in depth what people are doing. So it's kind of like I enjoy it, and I want to be a valuable mentor to people. So that kind of gets me into the code. Um, and when I don't know, when I'm coming up with a strategy and architecture, I just feel more informed if I dive into a few things in detail, understand how they work. Now, I can't do that in 40 technologies. Obviously, like 38 of them I'm going to read about and talk to
Right.
people about, but a couple I just kind of like to get into. So my my current thing, where might I live? I was at a company called Monch Health prior to this, and I got the team up to 8 or 10 people in technology. So I'd started writing a lot of code, but I've been doing less as that got bigger. And I mean, that's a great spot to be in. But I made a conscious decision. I was just going to just spend a year and just build something myself, hands on, and see if I could bootstrap it, and then just kind of have fun with that. When this company grows, I'm obviously going to build a team and kind of get out of the day to day a lot of stuff. But it was just, I learned, in this case, I learned, like Vue.js and Tailwind CSS for front end, and put it on Google's Firebase platform, for the first time. It was kind of a way for me to disconnect. You know this. I've done a lot of work on Microsoft Azure platform,
Yeah.
and I was just kind of looking to just like, okay, I just spent a year somewhere else and just get some empathy for what it comes like, what it's like on that side of things. So yeah, that's why I
So,
bounce back and forth.
so with the lens of kind of building that MVP for a new
Yeah,
product, and that's something that you've done a lot of, like, how do you choose the technology? Like, there's
yeah,
the landscape is so vast, and like if you started like just doing research, it's like there's so many options for everything, and everyone promises that they will address all of your concerns, and once you get into it, it's never the case. You always have to, like stitch things together and do a bunch of
yeah,
kind of make the service catalog become your platform, right? And so how do you
yeah,
make the selections? How do you like avoid analysis paralysis and pick the
yeah,
technologies that you think are going to work for you?
yeah. Um, so before I think about technology, like I go in very clearly that my customer doesn't care what technology I use. So at the end of the day, that's my decision what technology. They don't care. My investors probably care a little bit, but not more. They care more about the result, and the kind of user experience is everything. So I'll be very specific about where might I live. Let me take 2 minutes on the functionality and kind of how I backed into some technology decisions. So you can come to this service if you don't if you're feeling anxious about where you live today and can move anywhere in the country. You can come in and you can tell us what you care about. Do you care about politics or weather or traffic or housing prices or cuisine or outdoor activities? We wanted to collect like just hundreds and hundreds of data sets, and have attributes about every county and city in the world and in the country. World will be later. And we envisioned a really fast interactive map interface, so you could kind of dial in your criteria on one side, the map would instantly change, and there'd be a heat map, and you could kind of zero in on what you wanted to see. Um, so it had to be super performant. Like I drag a slider and it just changes instantly. It could not be drag a slider, hit submit, wait a second or two for something to come back. That would kill the experience. I'm trying to make this fun for people and engaging and have it be sticky. So kind of with that as I'll call it the performance and UI objective. Um, uh, yeah, there were a few things. So had to figure out a mapping platform that would let us put kind of layers on top and kind of do interesting things there. Had to do some really fast computation on a lot of data, basically. And this startup is kind of self-funded bootstrap. So like I did not have a budget to hire other people, and I wanted to get in front of customers quickly. I didn't want to spend 9-10 months building this. I wanted to have an MVP out in 3 months, kind of thing. So wanted a platform that just had a lot of services that I could take advantage of and not overthink it. So kind of purposely took let's build something that'll work and scale for a year. And if this thing's successful, we're certainly going to expand and re-architect. So I didn't get trapped into like 5-year architecture thinking. So with that, so on mapping, I looked at Google Maps, looked at what's the one? It's a Mapbox. I don't know. There's 2 or 3 commercial ones, and there's kind of Google Maps, and built some prototypes around each. Google Maps was the easiest API to integrate, and the pricing was better, and it was going to work. So didn't overthink that. And then the computation stuff. Your first thought is to run some computation engine on the server that's lightning fast, right? And built some of that in Node just as an idea. And it was taking a second and a half, 2 seconds to do a computation with smaller data sets. So that wasn't going to work. So you had to kind of custom cook up a way to do this all in the browser. So we took all our data. It's 3,143 counties in the U.S. and about 200 different data sets, and we actually pre-computed not a probability, just just a number, for each percentile rank for each county for that matrix, and then that actually sits in the browser, and then we do kind of a ranking and computation weighted average on that, like really fast in the browser, and then use that to color the polygons on the map.
Are you basically using your client's computer to perform the
Yeah,
computation? That's so
yeah,
interesting. Actually, like
yeah,
it's like coming back to the source, like like actually running distributed compute in a very true sense, because my
yeah.
computer is probably stronger than making the trip back and forth to the cloud. Now, so
Yeah.
this is very
I remember, I'll
interesting.
interrupt you, but you've seen Scott Hanselman talk from Microsoft.
Sure,
Like
sure,
that.
sure.
I
Yeah.
just, I saw a speech of his 10 years. He's always funny, but he brought up a browser. I think he had, someone had written a VM in JavaScript that was running an emulation of something inside. He just making this point, like these things are really powerful. And that always stuck with me. Like, okay, maybe we can take advantage of that.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I think
go ahead. I'm sorry.
we're kind of like we keep thinking of cloud as the main part, like the main way to do compute, but it is
Yeah.
expensive. So one of the things that's very clear in kind of what you were just describing is that financials are a very core part. Like
Yeah.
how much does it cost you is a very core feature of the
Yeah.
platform, right? So you like I think especially for like people earlier in their careers, like people usually make the choices based on tech, and so they when they evaluate
Yeah.
technology they like, oh, bells and whistles and whatever, and then like, okay, like am I making 1,000 API calls in a minute, and is it going to
Yeah.
cost me $1 million to just serve you one web page, like, right? So
Exactly.
talk a little bit about that, like how does
Yeah.
that influence your choices?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I call it cost engineering. I think that's a term. um, yeah. I mean, it used to be you had to buy servers and racks and run data centers, and now it's shifted to the cloud. But the folks operating those pass their costs on to you, so you have to factor it in. For us, the two main costs on this Google platform in this case are calling the Google Maps API, and then you're actually charged by read and write to the Firestore NoSQL database that we're using. So um, um, I sought to minimize those. So it did some back of the envelope up front. Like if we have 1,000 or 100,000 or a million users interacting with a map so many times a month, how does that add up? And the answer, it adds up significantly. So just some very specific architecture on the front end to really only instantiate that map once. Like you're charged to bring the map up, and then any interaction you do with it, you're not charged for. So ended up with a single page application. You really can't get off that page and force a refresh unless you really try. And it would have been just as easy to architect it differently, or like you're drilling on a map tile, see a profile come back. That could have been 2 API calls, or 10 or 30, depending on how many times you go back and forth. But for us, it's only one. So there's that. And then on the data access, this client performing the computation just like took all the cost out of the back end. We use the back end. There's an ETL pipeline. We go source this data and normalize it and stage it, and then create this package for the client. But that happens, once a week, once a month now. So our end users don't even hit the database, for these calculations. They hit it to record changes to their profile or this logging that we're doing, but it's minimal. So that's what we're doing. And now, now we're evaluating how to use AI. And if you look at prices per token using Chat GPT, that can add up really quick. I know it'll come down over time, obviously, but have the same issue there.
So talk about that. Like
Yeah.
I know everybody's buzzing about AI right now. It's like all that the only way to get
Yeah.
VC funding is just to like,
Yeah.
say your startup does something with AI, whether or not like this solving a business problem, like, oh my God, we're
Yeah.
gonna put LLMs in there. So I know you did a bunch of research into that, and so like
Yeah.
talk talk to me through like the research process, and like is it actually useful? Are you gonna, rely on this? How does that work for you?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I kind of go through this with every new buzzword. This is why I reacted to your tagline. I get my partners in a business or some business folks saying, "Steve, you need to use blockchain in here." Why? I don't know why. I just know it's going to, okay, so you're putting it on me to figure out how to use this tool without a clear. So,
The
so
hammer. It's a really
I,
cool hammer. We want you to use the hammer, but I don't have any else. We want you to use it. You should figure out a use case. Like, okay.
right. Don't you care how the house looks? Do you really care? Like I got this. So I was getting some of that, with AI, and I have an open mind. I'm also a little resistant to the use my hammer thing. So I was a little resistant, and then like, there's obviously for folks like you and I, there's Copilot, and there's like there's a lot like we need to figure out how to use this or we're going to be irrelevant as coders. So I have that going on, and that's starting to make some sense to me. So about a month of like career crisis, not really, but I just said, okay, I'm gonna dive in objectively and see what we can do. So we want, like we wanted to use AI to make to basically let this thing be conversational, have it talk to our customer, and that's what our business folks presented to me. So I dig in to understand generative AI at a lower level of detail, and the first thing I kind of realized that, well, it's not that you prompt it, and results come out, and then you prompt it again with the context of your last prompt. So it's not actually driving the conversation, kind of you are, and you know. You read up on this stuff. I found another entrepreneur that's building a company, and not in our space, but he's using AI for something else. And I just start talking to people about it, and kind of figured out an approach where if we could drive the conversation and make it appear to our end user that we're driving it, but really behind the scenes, like we're gathering input and kind of managing the prompts actively. What we think we can do is like get some interesting kind of results for our end users that are less structured than the data we're collecting. Like maybe take your narrative input and opinion and stuff we could never map to a data point is the big idea behind it. So that's what we're trying to do, and we're prototyping this and figuring it out, that way.
So kind of
So
translating from
yeah,
natural language into because I can't like drop down into a spreadsheet based on some
yeah,
sentiment that I had, but maybe AI can figure out how to get it. And it's interesting in your space. So like the biggest concern, well, apart from how ethical all of this is, and that's a whole other conversation. The biggest concern is like
yeah,
the accuracy of the responses, right? Because like it if I'm in healthcare, it doesn't matter to me if it like is 95% correct if one time it kills a
yeah,
patient, like, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
I guess the stakes on the stuff that you do are currently lower because like if I'm getting a wrong response, I'll just try again. Like, right, it's
yeah,
okay to kind of get it wrong and be like, no, that's not what I meant. I want a different response. Like, right. So
yeah, yeah. Yeah, very, very, very true. But I mean, to that point, I think I have to have an even greater appreciation for users using my tool differently than I expected. There's input, the output's non-deterministic, and it could be bizarre or harmful or offensive or weird or irrelevant. So I guess it's still abstract for me, but it's not going to be an open chat interface. We're building a UI around it. We got this stuff coming from the transformer, and then we've got to normalize that and put it into a UI somehow. And I'm expecting, I don't know, expecting a lot of work to take what it gives us and see how relevant it is and can we use it. So it's I'm expecting like a lot of R&D and discovery in this process, kind of more than I've been used to. It's kind of a mind shift, that way.
what's interesting is like the learning experience, especially in a new space like this that is clear, like it's clearly gonna continue developing and producing results and stuff like that. Is like you can take it to the next level next time. Like if it works here, amazing. If it works next time, is amazing. Like you live to learn and discover new
Yeah,
possibilities with this technology. So yeah, it's good to like I've talked to some people who are thinking about using it in different spaces, and like some of them seem like very complicated. I'm like I feel like having deterministic answers to some questions is much better. It's like
Yeah, yeah,
we
yeah,
keep talking about like different contexts matter, and so like sometimes people are like, oh, I want to be just like Google or just like Netflix. Like, are you
yeah,
serving people cat pictures on the internet? Are you dealing with money, or are you dealing with
yeah,
people's lives? Like, right? Cat
yeah,
pictures gives you a lot more freedom for like being innovative and doing cool stuff and having fantastic user experience. But maybe like, if my money is accidentally doesn't restart at the same time, like at the same level that I left it yesterday, I'm going to be a lot more concerned about this than if my Netflix show doesn't restart at the same place. Like
exactly.
different levels of reliability we're talking about here, right?
Oh yeah, 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 exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, at my last company, Monch Health, which is in the healthcare space, if we'd been applying AI there, yeah, like heavily regulated, kind of life and death. I would have, I probably better left to companies with hundreds of millions of dollars in funding, kind of to take on, kind of over time, more carefully. It's less of a casual kind of experimental undertaking,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because people talk about like evaluating correctness and accuracy, but like, well, to me at least, like the only way to evaluate correctness and accuracy is to have an actually human generated like kind of evaluation. So like at that point, what did you win? Like if I have to generate a database of incorrect responses or something like that, like that is
Right.
deterministic, like did I really save that? I don't know, but we'll live to see, how the space develops. It's like yeah,
Yeah.
like you mentioned Compilot, like when you have a human actually sort of processing and approving the result, like that's amazing. Like I use ChatGPT all the time, but as long as I'm looking at it, like at the results, and I can actually evaluate if it's doing a good job or not, right?
Yeah.
But once you get into it, like there was recently some case where like some lawyer showed up with references to cases that didn't exist because ChatGPT just made stuff up, like right? And it's like, I
Well,
mean,
yeah, yeah,
he
yeah.
kind of evaluated the response, but he like, he didn't go double check that every case actually existed. And so like, it's easy. And I think, for
Yeah.
people who are less savvy in that space and might actually assume that all of the stuff that it responds with is absolutely correct. And so like, because it looks confident and that's what we appreciate.
Yeah, it does. I mean, one thing I'm planning to do is to train it on my own data and see my thesis is this. We're really good at getting objective data about weather and tax rates and housing prices and accounting restaurants, things you can quantify. Um, People have very subjective needs as well. They might want a place with a certain vibe, or there's a certain kind of cuisine they're looking for in their neighborhood. Like, these aren't things we're going to find facts and figures about.
You
Like
you
my
can't.
dream is I could just like load like just tons of like just I like articles and menus and just unstructured stuff I find around, and then put it in and see if I can get a useful result out of it that adds to the objective stuff. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I want to experiment with.
So this is interesting. Like I went through this process like relatively recently, right? I chose a
Oh,
completely different place to live, and I started off with a spreadsheet, and like I had a criteria, and it was very clear cut. Like, I went this and this and this and that, and like there's lots of places that meet the criteria. There was some criteria that was impossible to meet. Like quickly, it was like, okay, I have to give up on this because it's never going to happen, kind of thing.
yeah,
So like, okay, the X is more important than Y, therefore. Right. But in the end, what ended up happening is I went to like actually three different states, and like I was driving around looking at places. And one of the
yeah,
places was just like, it feels better than others. Like it
yeah,
feels better. Like we get like I don't know, the architecture and the
yeah,
trees. I don't, something
yeah,
about like how do you solve this problem in a objective criteria space? I'm not sure.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, like in that case, maybe we could have pointed you to areas that might fit. Like, but a lot of these have to go out in the world and experience too. Like, I don't think
If
AI solves everything, right? But if
so,
it can help in the process, right?
I'll give you a completely funny example. Like
Okay.
while looking at houses, I discovered that I like basements more than second floors, like finished basements
Oh,
as opposed to
okay.
second. Like I did not know I had this preference. I'm also reevaluating the preference because my house has flooded since I got it, so this is great. But like, regardless,
I'm sorry. Okay.
it's fine. It's fine. But you know, it's I I did know I had the preference, and then like, but once I like, so, and I can explain the preference, right? Because when you have a second floor, the bedrooms are usually on the second floor, so you end up doing bedroom kitchen all the time, and that's
Oh,
kind of
right. Yeah.
annoying. Whereas
Yeah.
when you have a finished basement, usually the like like the areas you don't have to be like my office is in the basement. Like I don't
Yeah.
strictly have to go to the office. Like you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
if I broke a
Yeah.
leg, I didn't have to go to the office. Like you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Right.
That kind
Right.
of stuff. So it's like an optional space extension as opposed to mandatory space extension. Also, it's
Yeah.
like it's totally different climate kind of thing. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's an interesting thing, and it's like how do you know this? And then definitely some areas, like some areas you can't even build a basement because of how like the landscape is. In some areas it's very common to build basements, in some areas it's not common. It's like you don't know this about an area until you show up and it's like, oh, every single house has a finished basement, I kind of like it here,
Yeah.
like you know. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting discovery process, which I don't necessarily know how you do without like getting involved in like I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe some videos would help like of like what houses look like. I'm not sure.
Yeah. 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 It's yeah. It is. It's a great point. You don't know what you want sometimes till you see it or you figure it out through a process. That's for sure. It's not you can't
So
walk in with a checklist and get an answer and like and stuff, especially the stuff where you live life.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think some people do it like that, but I think majority of people will just be sold on this had the exact granite tops I always wanted
Yeah.
or something like you know,
Yeah.
and it's like that. Um, but I wanted to actually ask you a question on this because you've built some you know startups from the ground up, and it's like you maybe are pitching to VC or maybe pitching to a couple of people, or maybe even like if you're bootstrapping, you're literally deciding with like your couple of business partners. Like, how do you decide? Like you just said,
Yeah.
latency was paramount. Like latency was the most important thing. Like if we had to do computation, not just like correctly but fast, like right, and otherwise it would break it. How do you decide what's the important user requirements without like being able to like talk to your user because it's a prospective user that you don't necessarily know anything about?
Yeah. It's a great one. Um, well, a couple things. You actually, here, I'll talk about Monch Health as an example because it was quite substantial. We did talk to customers super early. That company's first product was an employee wellness offering, like so a SaaS product for employees of companies, teach them how to eat and cook and be healthy. So it's an HR benefit. Um, we we built a paper demo and it started work on the thing. We're maybe 2 months in, and then like my partner was brilliant at this. We went around and found a couple companies that were willing to pilot this thing with us once it was built. That's a hard thing to do. But we walked into like a major company, I won't name them, here in San Francisco, and got pointed feedback on the wireframes. It guided our development a bit. It helped us prioritize. I can't remember specific, but I'm sure it knocked two features out that we thought were important, and there's one we forgot about they needed to implement. So um, pilot customers, customer councils, people on your advisory board, kind of in your customer set. Um, Getting your UX and your design people involved early, talking to potential users, like all these things, getting inside people's heads is just huge as far as knowing what to do. Um,
So I
I
have
guess second point,
follow-up questions, I guess,
yeah,
like
yeah,
on this. So I find it so a couple of things, like a couple of pitfalls that people fall into. Like one is they talk to users, prospective users, and all users are like, "Oh, we love this," like right,
sure,
and they
yeah,
don't ask the question like, "How much would you pay for this?" like, right? And then once they come with a MVP and they go like, this is $10,000, and the user goes like, oh, no, 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 no.
Right.
I wanted this for free. Like, if
Sure.
it's not free, no, thank you. Like, this is not like, so how do you avoid this? It's hard to
Yeah.
legally ask people to give you money before you have a product. So like,
Yeah.
how do you kind of solve that problem?
Yeah. Okay. So I think it's a little different if you're talking to a corporate customer that might maybe is doing a pilot versus a consumer end user. In my like corporate customer case, it was like, what do we have to do for you guys to do a pilot? So like it was like forcing them to say yes or no to something, and that helped them think through prioritizing stuff. But yeah, when you're talking to an end user, yeah, they kind of want to say yes to everything, or like if you they may get kind of into just, I don't know, like critiquing one little feature you show them that day. That's not the most important thing in their mind, you know. So like the talented designers I've seen, they kind of use a technique where you'll test an onboarding process, and they'll put one sheet of paper in front of you with a mocked up screen and say, what would you do? Like, just describe what you're thinking, you know, verbally. And you try to like get to what people's emotions are, what's preventing them or encouraging them to click a button, or kind of move on. And so rather than asking about the system, you kind of like help them walk through something and see how they react. I mean, that seems to work,
So what's
you know,
user
really
behavior?
well.
I know
Yeah.
that like hack is like ask people like, okay, if you have this problem, how do you currently solve this?
Yeah.
And then you like watch them. So like they have, if they actually have a problem they're trying to solve, right? They have a workaround because they have to solve it. Like, right? And if they don't have a workaround, they don't have a real problem and they don't care about your product usually. Which doesn't mean that you can't sell it, but it does mean that you need to work a lot harder to convince
Yeah.
people that they actually need to, like, they need this in their life, right? But if they have a
Yeah.
workaround, they're like, okay, here's what I do to make this work for me, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Like you can, yeah. Like one way to measure that, I mean, early on a process, if I don't know if you send out a prototype to like 50 colleagues and friends for feedback, um, like don't don't be there going getting all the great feedback, all the glowing feedback from people you know, and go, yeah, we nailed it. Like, do something like, I sent this to 50 people who know me, and you know, 8 of them took the time to evaluate it. So okay, so over 80%, it wasn't relevant enough to their lives to take an interest in even having a relationship with me. So that might tell you something about the market size. And then, you know, the ones that got in, like, ask how long they spent with it. And if they spent 3 minutes and gave you some thumbs up and a few pointers, they're probably doing you a favor. If they spent 20 minutes in it and got engaged with it, like, oh, I think I found somebody. I think I found one of my actual users here. Um,
Interesting.
you know, and then you like from this you can hopefully find out of the persona of people you're actually serving, and then go find more people that are actually like that and get feedback from them. Would be one specific thing you could do.
How do you not fall? So this is something you mentioned in like passing, but how do you not fall into this? Oh, one user, and this especially maybe plays off in like the B2B customer world because
Yeah.
one customer can be, you know, a huge company with lots of money, and
Yeah.
this particular person wants blah, and that blah, like if it's easy to give them, that's good. But if it's like, let's say it's 3 months and, you know, distracting you from other priorities, how do you evaluate, like, should I give them the thing they're asking for? Should I hold off on that? Should I like, what do you do?
Yeah, yeah. God, it's a trap. I mean, I've fallen. You know, like you get a loud user with an opinion, and like, I can solve that for that person, right? First thing, like, just know, like everyone has an opinion. If you take everyone's opinion, your product will be designed by committee and will have no point of view or cohesion. So like you like just kind of like trust in yourself to take input, but to edit and be confident about what you're doing, be willing to say no. And also take all the input seriously, just kind of as a mindset, you know. um, I get like we get, I we get a lot of user feedback, coming in, from where might I live. I had one person give like a lot of great feedback at the site, and then like took issue as you hover over the map, we turn the polygon red for contrast. And I got 2 paragraphs on red is the color of error messages. It made me right. It's kind of like, oh, come on, right? But but take it
Maybe,
seriously.
I
I don't
don't
know.
know.
Just like it made me feel anxious. I didn't want to click on it. You're like, oh, well, okay. Like I had that exact same reaction. Like, give me a break. But okay, well, maybe there's something to that. Right?
Maybe like then ask maybe 50 more people, and it's like, did
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
have a negative, or try it with green and see if it's bad. I don't know.
Yeah. So yeah. So if you have an intuition, you're right. Like just like test it with a lot of people, get some opinion, make informed decisions. I find like your partners and colleagues at your company are going to have ideas too. Some good, but I often have a like, that's great. Let's take that input along with everything we get from our customers and stuff. Like just don't be in the trap of changing it because the VP of whatever had an idea last week. Take them seriously. They may be representing a customer need or have some insight, but they don't get automatic rights to change stuff.
So this is like, I guess it's as relevant for startups as it is for big companies. So like
Yeah,
two things that like are hard for folks. So one is like, what are the avenues of collecting that user feedback? Like, right? Because people
yeah,
sometimes assume like, oh, just put a comment box on the site, and people don't do that, or like, you'll get only like 1% of the most egregious feedback that way, or like, so
yeah,
there's some elaborate tools that build like PS scores into everything and feedback buttons
yeah,
and whatever. There's people who just go talk to focus groups periodically. There's so many potential avenues of feedback. And then, like, a lot of times also, people will do this stuff and not actually like address it or have a way to prioritize it. So like you aggregate all this
yeah,
lots of information, and then like potentially even make it worse, because if you have like some ways to collect feedback but you never respond to any of it, like it can even feel worse, because like now I
oh sure,
now
yeah,
I've given you 2 paragraphs on why red polygons are bad, and you have not like done anything about it. And if I'm a devoted user, like, right, maybe I
yeah,
dislike the product now.
yeah. So I know there's a continuum between being very kind of process and data oriented around that. Like you said, like collecting NPS scores every bit and collecting click streams, and there's more intuitive end. I tend to fall towards the more intuitive end. Just that's my bias. Like the data I like to collect about UI is just usage data. I always have a counter on every feature, and it's really, I find that really insightful to know if only 4% of people are using this feature you built, and this is a real story. 4% of people are using our share feature, which we thought was going to be critical to our growth. And we kept interviewing people and re-engineering it. And we got up to 5%. And so that told me something's wrong with the feature, and that spawned some interviews and talking, and what we arrived through talking with people is, a lot of people don't, they feel it's just weird to like share this personal process about where they're moving with all but the closest friends. It's not something you're gonna post to Facebook. A lot of people told us like, hey, I tell my parents or my spouse or my partner, some close friends, I'm thinking about this. I'm not going to broadcast. I'm looking at these 17
Yeah.
counties. So we come up with a feature for our business model that like people didn't want. So that was just one
Or
example of
maybe
using
there's like a
data.
different way to, like, you want it for marketing, but that's not like if you want it for marketing, you want it different. So this is
Yeah.
a really interesting. You started off with your intuitive, but then I build a counter into every feature, every button, every whatever.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
the thing that people just don't do. And like I see so much product development driven by opinions, right? And then like
Yeah.
people have no data, and then you will fall into this trap of you have a couple vocal users talking about how important X is, and you just listen to them because they're the only ones speaking. And then if you
Yeah.
actually collected data, you would figure out that like there's literally no one using the feature. Maybe it's important to this like 2% of people, and it's really important and they really want it, but it's not gonna like sort of make you money or drive the product forward because to most people that is not important at all.
Yes, exactly. Um, but like getting that intuitive feedback, like I mean the hybrid is you want to test or design something, so you do the focus group. But when I do this or send someone out, it's like let's get 10 or 11 people, consent to let them be videoed, like help them talk about how they're feeling about using the features, and let the product managers and business people and engineers and designers, like let them look at that stuff. Let them feel their customers' point of view, like get them out of their heads and how people are using it. Like the more you can push that into the team, the better. So like a lot of like I think we were talking about this last week. A lot of little decisions get made, kind of beyond the big kind of design and priority stuff day to day. And if your team members can kind of empathize with your customers, you may get a better product for the customer just kind of through little things that get made as well. So that's another idea.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
This is kind of amazing. I do feel like sort of product design and management is like this forgotten pillar of like software development because it's like a lot of people kind of don't treat it as job. So like a lot of
mm,
times what goes into product management is just project management. So it's like we're managing, dragging
yeah,
stories on the board and we're managing velocity and stuff and we're like trying to stay on budget and stuff. But like
yeah,
when you ask people like how you actually like have you talked to your customers? Like,
yeah,
no.
yeah,
Okay. Like how is this working? Um,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's also like it is interesting also like if you are in proper product development, like you're probably doing like market research and stuff like that, like right?
yeah,
It's like it's interesting how many like how much of these concerns gets abdicated to like nobody or the CEO of the company. Like CEO decided that we're gonna
yeah,
X, like right? And
yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
well, is that the right decision? Like, is the CEO has the CEO ever interacted with my customers? Like, I don't know. Like,
yeah. Exactly. Or yeah, the CEO or nobody. Like it just like it falls to a technology team that doesn't have that skill or understand that point of view. So they just start engineering things, and the CEO wonders. I was pretty clear what we're doing. Why isn't that coming out? because this key
yeah,
function isn't no one owns it, right?
yeah. The priority. It's funny because like people drive the backlog, but not the priority. So like the how we
Mm,
pick a next feature to build is so random in a lot of places that it's like,
yeah,
why are we doing
yeah,
this and not that? Like, and it just like yeah, it's kind of this. Okay. I feel like
yeah.
we've
That's true.
we've got a particular way. Want a topic shift. So like tell me about
Okay.
the guitars. You've got guitars
which one?
behind
Which
you
one would
and
you like to know about?
oh, well your favorite one obviously. Like the one so
Well, the
I know
one
you're
here.
in a band, so you
Yeah.
have to tell me about that.
So this is the main guitar. It's
Okay.
a Music Man Majesty guitar. It is it is the most comfortable playable neck I've ever played. Um, it's got so it's this is well designed. So I'm trying to get it in the camera. I can't. My brain doesn't work left to right. There we
It
go.
we can see
the
it.
the controls apparently were designed to follow the arc of your arm as you move across. So if you go to
Speaking
make a
of
switch
product
and do
design, right?
yeah. So they did this with a guitarist named John Petrucci. You probably know who he is. So it's a signature model. So it's kind of been built with a lot of design in mind. But I don't know. I just this one speaks to me. Love it. Um, it's awesome. And I just broke a string.
Oh,
It's all
all
right.
right.
They're cheap. They're cheap. And
So
then
obviously, I just learned that your music is on Spotify. So obviously, like I can, how do people find you? And I will drop it in the show notes.
Oh, sure, sure,
You know,
sure. So the band is Cult of Helios. We're kind of a alternative rock, gothic kind of space wave band. Yeah, but check us out. We've been recording music and out and playing around in California for the last few years. It's a passion
nice.
project. It's fun. Yeah,
I gotta catch a live show at some point. So
yeah.
another question, I guess, I'm sort of in the same vein. I know you, how do people find you? Like, if someone wants to consult with you about building a new startup or even building a product inside the company, what are your areas of interest in that space, and how do people find you?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I've got a personal website, steveharshbarger.com. And that kind of describes my approach to helping, either startups or kind of startup efforts within a company, kind of crystallize a vision, and then you get something kind of designed and built. So my sweet spot is kind of 0 to 1 on a product. Great idea, empty whiteboard, define it, build a team around it, get it out in the market, get some feedback, and kind of iterate. Like I said, I've done that with entrepreneurs and startups, and I can certainly do it with companies that are being entrepreneurial with a new product area. So
Yeah.
that's what I do. Yeah.
Actually, I forgot to ask you about something. So there is this approach in, like, parts of like lean software development that talks about, like, when you build an MVP, you build an MVP and then you throw it out. Like, yeah, don't try to sort of progress into all eternity with your MVP. And then, of course, most of the time in real world that doesn't happen. But like, what's your take on this? So, like, do you build a throwaway prototype? Do you build something
Yeah,
that lives
yeah.
for?
I think that's an idealistic fantasy that us engineers have. We get to throw it out, right? Yeah, I mean, the reality is the code you build. You're going to have to build upon it and iterate with it. Like no company or investor wants a 6 month timeout for you to re-architect, no matter how much you sold that the idea early on. So um, I try to be very cognizant of the shortcuts I'm taking. Actually, like, keep a ledger of my technical debt, and kind of know when I should be refactoring something, and just find opportunities to insert it in the schedule, with major new features. It's not hiding it from the budget. It's just kind of spreading that investment around, and
I
then
I wish
constantly
we
I'm
I wish we did
educating.
that. I
Yeah,
honestly wish we did that. Like, so actually, this is a Steve story from probably 10 years ago, and a Steve as a mentor story. I remember we were building something, and like, I don't remember what it was and what. I know I took a shortcut, and I was building something, and I was like, I need to deliver it tomorrow, and like, I don't have time, and I have to, like, do this, you know, not in a very elegant way. And I was kind of
yeah,
talking to you about it, and you were like, you know what? I always, like, comment it, and I put in a comment and say this is a shortcut, and
oh yeah,
when we
yeah.
have time, we should, like, build a better code. Apologies to whoever, maintaining this.
Oh, that's right. I remember that.
And I'm like, this actually did make me feel better. I'm like, oh, this is good. But like, if you actually keeping kind of a record of this, it's like, so this is something I've been saying a lot recently, is we kind of don't think about code as like something that needs to be maintained. Like, right, we keep
Yeah,
chugging along full speed and assuming there's a lot of this assumption that, like, whatever we build has to be perfect for all eternity, which you end up with one of two things. Either you, like, invest, like, you burn so much cycles on trying to engineer it for all possible futures, and that's impossible because, like, you just can't do it. Or like, you're under the impression that you build it right, and then someone else comes in and, like, needs different requirements. It's like, I think we should just be sort of more flexible and more understanding of the fact that, like, code doesn't live forever. Like, it's like, again, if you
yeah,
bought a plow, right, a mechanical machine, you would expect it to sort of fall
yeah.
apart over time and have maintenance and be replaced with better technology. So, like, how come we are not thinking about software this way? Because I definitely talk to people who are like, well, we had this project for 10 years and now somehow it's not working. It must have been badly built. It's like, no, you've had it for 10 years. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
think about it. Like, it requires maintenance and re-architecture and new technology and
That's
stuff,
a
like,
great
right?
that's a great point. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I always I try to like educate the people that are paying for the product to be built. Like, hey, I can get us to market faster. We're gonna take some shortcuts, and we'll have to deal with this in about a year. Are you okay with that? They may or may not internalize that, but I do I kind of push up, as well. And then if you get people kind of involved in partnership with you and understanding, what shortcuts you're taking, they're more amenable to helping you out later. So just good communication in all of life
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, and again, it's not perfect because like people will tell you this is fine, and then it won't be fine when the push
Mm-hmm.
comes to shove. But like
Yep.
you
Yep.
just kind of have
Yeah.
to have these conversations, and also it's a cost benefit analysis. Like, do we want to
Yeah.
be there soon, or do we want to be there perfect? And again, in my personal opinion, perfect doesn't exist. Like, right, no matter how well you build something, like your customer's going to use it in a different way than you expected,
Yeah.
or someone will release a major breakthrough in technology, then you have to now rewrite all of your code to keep up with and stuff like that, right? So no matter how you do it, it's never going to be perfect. But you do sometimes take intentional shortcuts. It's like, okay, this should be better, but it would cost us too much time or money to get it that way. So,
Yeah.
we're going to live with this for now and figure
Yeah.
out if, someone wants to exchange that money for value, in which case we can make it better.
A developer that's working for me now, like your story about that conversation we had, my developer last week, he's like, yeah, he's like, can I ask you a question? I'm in your code and there's this big capital letter says hack, and it describes like this big shortcut. So it was just that kind of leave notes for your future self or other people.
Yeah.
Can be very helpful, but for architecture too. Like if you made a you know,
Yeah, especially if
I
you
don't know.
knowingly kind of saying like, okay,
Yeah,
this is what's good about this, but this is what's bad about this. Please
yeah,
beware, next time. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I maybe we need a tool for maintaining records of technical debt. I don't know. This probably won't
Mm.
scale. It's like documentation, right? You gotta keep up with it. It doesn't work.
I think AI can do that. Just can you make
Maybe.
AI work? Make it happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. New startup idea.
All
All
right.
right. Well, I think we're about to wrap up. Is there anything we forgot to talk about that you want to share? Or is there anything like, hey, I just read this book or I just learned this thing that I want to recommend everybody checks out?
Oh, I don't know. Here, it's never too late for education. This is not a plug, but I've enrolled myself in a 4-week AI crash course through Stanford Continuing Education. I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to go absorb stuff from a smart professor, meet some other folks, and kind of get out into the world and make stuff happen. So, um, I think all of us going through a pandemic and working more remotely, there's a ton of value to being in the world, kind of meeting people and conversing and talking. And if any of you feel like that's atrophied,
Yeah.
work at getting back out there. So that's one example of something I'm doing to just to be back with real people. So that's my parting
Yeah,
advice.
100% agree. I've missed it so much, and like it's such a great feeling when you are, having a conversation with like-minded people and exchanging ideas and in person and not on the
Yeah,
screen. It's
I
amazing.
know.
But yeah, so hopefully next time in person. Well, thank you for
Exactly.
your time, and I'll we'll post this on YouTube, and we'll see you again in some time.
All right. Thank you, Sasha. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye now.